SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Gateway Rescue Mission, meeting the physical and spiritual needs of the homeless right here in Jackson, Mississippi. Check us out at www.gatewaymission.org.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
match day, y'all.
All right, tell us about that jersey you got on there.
It's not a jersey. This is just a patriotic polo I picked up. But yeah, I got. If you're not watching, I got one sleeve that is the stars on the blue field. The other sleeve is the red and white stripes. I've got my American Outlaws, American flag bandana. I got my red shoes on. We're ready to go.
Decked out, ready to go. So as far as the schedule is concerned, the U.S. will take on Paraguay, correct?
Tonight, kickoff scheduled for 8 o'clock on Fox or Tubi or Peacock or Fox 1 or wherever else.
Okay.
Pre-game starts at 5.
Gotcha. Well, it's a big deal, and I'm kind of pleased to see that a range of media are covering this event, talking about the World Cup, of course, and that's good because it's a big deal to have that stateside and in this hemisphere, I guess.
It's the first time it has been World Cup match day in America since I was 8 years old.
Wow. So it's not here very often.
No.
But the sport has gained in popularity, as you know, in this country. Certainly not to the level that it is in Europe, South America, other countries abroad. But it has gained a lot. And, heck, all you got to do is drive around, seems like almost any weekend, in any local area and see the soccer fields just covered up with little soccer players. It's good for them. It's great exercise because there's a bunch of running involved in it. But they got lots of energy that we old folks don't necessarily have. But it's neat. I think it is. What do you think about the U.S.'s chances here?
I think in an ideal situation, it'd be 3 or 4 to 1 USA. I think realistically, if it were played on paper, it'd be about a 2-1 USA. It's the World Cup.
Yeah.
You never can tell. I'm hoping for the best. I'm rooting for the best. But there have been World Cups where the U.S. has gone home empty-handed, grouped, and didn't get to play another match after the group stage. So I'm hoping. I don't think that's going to happen this time around. It would be really, really tough to get grouped. I think we have the potential to make it to the round of 16, and then from there it just depends on where the chips fall as far as how the other groups wound up, who is on the side of the bracket with you, and how you play that day.
Would you, however, say that the U.S. is more competitive in this World Cup than it has been in the past? Or
easily.
That's what I thought.
You could make an argument for the 2002 World Cup because the U.S. made it to the quarterfinals in that World Cup, that's a really talented group. But if you look man-to-man, this World Cup group from the U.S. is the most talented player-to-player than any other group we've ever taken to a World Cup.
Okay.
And we've got a manager in Mauricio Pochettino who is world-class. He was a world-class player. He's a world-class manager. He's got the passion. He's got the pedigree. If there's a time to make some magic happen in America with the beautiful game, it's now.
It seems like it. And that's what I'm hearing from all the experts on the matter, both in the normal media and in the sports media as well, the news media and the sports media. They're saying the same thing, similar analysis. And, on the business channel, there are a few Brits, of course, that are anchors and hosts. And this is like Christmas to them, as you know. And they're all being asked, well, who are you pulling for? U.S. or England? These are American citizens, of course, that legally immigrated into this country and were naturalized. And they won't answer that question. They say it's a tough one. They really won't say one way or another. But
well, they're business people. They're pulled on that TV show because they're good at making good decisions and picking winners.
Yeah.
And I think they might realize that while England is a favorite to go pretty deep, England also tends to have a tendency to choke.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
true.
They don't want to jinx it.
Well, it's going to be fun. We shall see. And then, of course, we've got Ole Miss playing baseball tonight, right?
6 o'clock.
North Carolina kicking off the College World Series. And there are some who are speculating the Rebels could go deep in the tournament.
I mean, they are on the weaker side of the bracket on paper.
Yep. Should be interesting to see how that plays out. In other news, of course, the president says that he's got a deal with Iran to get this war behind us and open up the strait, rid Iran of their nuclear ambitions, etc. Unfortunately, however, this morning, Tehran reports that whoever the heck's in charge, that, quote, they had not reached a final conclusion on any peace agreement. The president responded by calling them, quote, very dishonorable people to deal with. And he warned they had better get their act together and fast. So the story yesterday called off further hostilities by the United States military after he had warned that it's going to come in retaliation for an incident earlier in the week. But he called that off, says, nope, we got a deal. But Tehran says, no, we don't have a deal. So the state media reported that Tehran will negotiate it with the U.S. to retain the country's uranium enrichment capabilities. It just doesn't feel like they're on board with giving up on that, does it? I don't know what the solution is, honestly. I do know I think you'd have to mark that down as, okay, we've completed the mission when we've got the uranium. What did the president say? When it's turned into dust, I think, is the metaphor he's using there. And Tehran says that they had not agreed to ceding management of the Strait of Hormuz and wants the release of $24 billion of Iran's frozen funds as, quote, compensation for damage incurred from the bombing campaign. So, I don't know. It sounds like that the president and Tehran are not on the same page, but you can't overlook the strong possibility, as you know, Rhino, you talk about all the time, how these people do not negotiate in good faith, that they are prolific liars, and that maybe it is true that they said, yes, Mr. President, we agree to this, but then as soon as the president goes public with it, they come back and say, oh, no, we didn't agree to that. That's quite plausible, knowing how they operate. And so here we are. Markets, they reacted fairly positively. I mean, it's kind of weird to see that you've got this almost conflict where you got hostilities going on, that's geopolitical unrest, market is soaring. Today, not quite the way it was yesterday, but the Dow is up 484 points. The NASDAQ had dipped into negative territory, now up comfortably 143. And, of course, a lot of the anticipation of this is driven by the anticipation of what is going to be the largest IPO in the nation's history, and that's SpaceX. Now, I caught a live conference conducted by the SpaceX founder, CEO, Elon Musk, of course, and he made it very clear this isn't about serving necessarily the government or the military or the space program, though they certainly would be a customer, if you will, of SpaceX's capabilities and technology. He said, no, this is about you. We want you to think Star Trek. That literally, he said that today. We want you to think about the average person being able to hop on a rocket ship and go to another planet, setting up business, occupying, residing on another celestial sphere, if you will. It was fascinating to hear his vision, the kind of stuff we always thought was science fiction. He said we wanted to turn the science fiction into reality. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but something to that effect. But here's what's going to happen. He will become the nation, the world's first trillionaire. I've been predicting it for 15 years. I just didn't think it'd come now. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Hey, this is Bob.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Well, the eagle's been flying slow, and the flag's been flying low, and a lot of people saying that America's fixing to fall. But speaking just for me, and some people from Tennessee, we got a thing or two to tell you all. This lady may have stumbled, but she ain't never...
Well, I'd say that's appropriate music there. Man, you're all patriotic. Got your patriotic shirt on. I love it. We got the great Charlie Daniels saying this lady may have stumbled, but she ain't never fallen. It's great. Great lyrics, great tune. That'll fire you up, make you proud to be an American, and we should be because our soccer team will be competing on the global stage, kicking off today. At what time does it get underway?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock versus Paraguay. Should be good. So I talked a little bit yesterday and have before on how, I know you're shocked, political operatives, politicians, political parties, they sort of stretch and distort and pervert and manipulate fact and truth. And no greater example of that is there than the Mississippi Democratic Party. I know you're shocked at that. And it really is incredible. A press release recently where they're calling out Mississippi Republicans who voted for the largest Medicaid cut in history. And, of course, the way they discuss it in this press release does not correspond with fact or truth. And what they say is that earlier this year, Representatives Trent Kelly and Michael Guest and Mike Ezel each voted for the One Big Beautiful Bill, which added nearly $5 trillion to the national debt to deliver tax cuts to the wealthy while slashing nearly $1 trillion from Medicaid over the next decade. And again, they don't give you the nuance here with respect to the Medicaid reforms that were enacted in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And, of course, what you think when you read that, or what they want you to think when you read that, is that Granny's being pushed off the cliff and children are going without health care and poor people are just suffering. That's what they want you to think, right? And it's all because of those mean old Republicans who are simply trying to get the program on the rail. And so just so you'll know, folks, what actually happened in the One Big Beautiful Bill in terms of the major reforms, and I know this is a bit of a repeat, but it's a year ago when we talked about it because that's when the bill passed. But there is a work requirement, mandatory work requirement for the non-disabled adults. That would be those enrolled in the so-called Medicaid expansion that came about in the Affordable Care Act, passed into law in 2010. Mississippi, as you know, is one of 10 states that has not expanded Medicaid, does not apply in the state of Mississippi. But these work requirements are pretty straightforward and very reasonable. You got to work, be involved in some sort of community service, or be a student for 80 hours a month to qualify for Medicaid. You have to have an income below 138% of the federal poverty level as a non-disabled adult who can work. That's all we're asking for. What's unreasonable about that? And tell me how that should be described as cuts. No, there's no cuts. Work, and you're good to go. And then more frequent eligibility checks. We're going to check every 6 months instead of annually. No cuts. You may get cut because you're no longer eligible. Another is the provider tax rollbacks. Now, provider taxes are simply taxes, fees that are paid by healthcare providers in order to prop up the program so that they can participate and help fund the state portion of Medicaid, because remember, it's a jointly funded program, federal government, state. In Mississippi, the federal government picks up 78% of it because it's based on per capita income, and regrettably, we have the lowest in the country. So these provider taxes, last I checked, Rhino, it's about $500 million a year in Mississippi. These are healthcare institutions that pay to help the state with its part of the funding, which is now at about $1 billion a year. And that just enables people to participate in the program, have Medicaid insurance, so that when they go see these healthcare institutions, they've got a reimbursement through Medicaid. That's it. And then this is one that is completely misrepresented, and it concerns the stricter citizenship/immigration requirements. Now, before the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, honestly, besides U.S. citizens who might be eligible for Medicaid, virtually anybody in the country. Now, that does not include illegals. They've never been eligible. That's not to say that because, as Rhino likes to say, they're not my problem people who are responsible for doing the eligibility checking and verification of citizenship status with very limited tools to do so. Just say, okay, you're good to go, right? That's what happens. Now, the law says you're not eligible. That doesn't mean they don't slip through and get approved. But all the law did, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act last year, all it did is it said, hey, look, even if you're a legal immigrant and you were previously eligible for Medicaid, you're not anymore unless you're a green card holder or a Cuban or Haitian immigrant. And that's a whole other complicated story why they get a special exception. It all goes back to the boat people in the 80s, literally. So that's hardly throwing people off the Medicaid rolls. We're not talking about U.S. citizens. We're talking about certain categories of legal immigrants that really shouldn't be receiving these benefits. And then there's a little $35 copay that states would have to impose on the expansion population, that coverage group. So those are the major reforms. It's pretty much it. But you hear the rhetoric that comes out of the Democrats, the way the language they use literally projects that, oh my gosh, all these people are just going to be out there on the streets. And that just doesn't happen. It doesn't. Now, we pay for it. But as we've said so many times, because of federal law, you show up in the ER, you're going to get treated. Whether you can pay or not, legal or illegal, doesn't matter. And then they're now on this big deal again in this press release about the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. He signaled cuts to Social Security and Medicare. No, he hasn't. They completely misrepresented what he said. He said reforms are needed, meaning, yeah, we're finding lots of misspending and improper spending in those programs. We got to rein that in. That's a different discussion than what do we got to do about Social Security and Medicare, which is going broke. Well, let's start with making sure we're only paying people who should be paid for these benefits. But they're saying they're going to cut Social Security and Medicare 100% for political gain. I hate this. You know I do. I hate it. You're lying for political expediency. And you're okay with that. You're selfish. You're greedy. They talk about us capitalists being greedy. That is greed. Lying to attain some result, that's greed. That epitomizes greed. Working your butt off to be financially rewarded because the market says, I like what you're doing. Friends, that ain't greed. That's what makes this country the most prosperous, the most powerful on the planet. It's our system of capitalism with no limits. I know that's nuanced and they don't get it. Second order thinking. But it's the absolute truth. We got to stop distorting fact, Mississippi Democrats. Stop it. I'm calling you out. You want to come on the show and talk about it? Come on. We're taking a break right now. I love it. Dinah Shore in her famous See the USA in a Chevrolet commercial. That was, from the 60s, I believe. Noelle Nikpour, Republican political strategist and commentator, joins MidDays next. Stay with us.
Performance is sweeter, nothing can beat her. Life is completer in a Chevy. So make a date today to see the USA and see it in your Chevrolet.
From the Seabrook.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
That's 1973, the great American rock band Grand Funk Railroad with We're an American Band. We're celebrating America today because it's the World Cup, and they're going to be taking on Paraguay later on, kicking it off for the United States team. Noelle Nikpour, Republican political strategist and commentator, joins us now. Hey, Noelle, thanks for coming on.
Hey there. Speaking of the World Cup, I am actually in New York City around all of it. We had the famous Knicks game that was won with 1 point.
Yep.
And we're about to switch into the World Cup.
That's awesome.
That's crazy.
Ah, good for you. That is totally awesome. We got a lot of politics and stuff going on as well. Let's start with the war. The president said yesterday, I'm calling off the attacks because we're close to a deal. And then he's pretty upset today because Tehran, whoever the heck is in charge over there, comes out and says, no, we're really not that close to a deal. What do you think here?
Well, first of all, we don't trust the Iranians, so there's that. They've been wiggly in the past. But I think that apparently there are a couple of conversations going on, but when it hits the media, when it hits the public, they've got a different tune. I think that they're trying to appear strong, and the problem is the United States has taken out, a lot of their main arteries, so to speak. So we're coming from a place of strength, and obviously President Trump is not going to be making these announcements, as regards to Iran if they weren't true. So then Iran turns around, probably doesn't like that it appears that President Trump is going to be responsible for, putting an end to it, and that's a win for the United States. So now they're, backpedaling and coming out with a different comment by saying not so fast there.
Incredible. Well, it appears that they're just not prepared to give up their nuclear ambitions. The president reported that they had agreed to that, but today they're saying they haven't. And I agree with you. They may say something behind closed doors as part of the negotiations with our team, and then to the world public say something totally different. But that's how they operate.
Yes, I mean, they when it comes in the media, when it comes to light, and the media spins it, and they look at what's going on in America, they realize that it puts them in a one-down position. It puts the United States as a clear winner in the negotiation table, and it makes them look like they've negotiated their nukes away. Yeah. And that's the only thing that they have to bully everybody in the world with. So it's for Iran, it's a scary place. That they want their nukes, they want their program. That's been their claim to fame, and that's what's kind of kept people away from them a little bit, so to speak. So I feel like there was a deal probably cut, because I just don't see President Trump coming out saying this is finally going to be over, and then they turn around and say, no, that's not what we're thinking. I think they change it when it hits the media and they look weak.
I agree. It's a similar MO, if you will, to the CCP in China. That's how they operate as well. I mean, it's almost as if that when you just lie and you're duplicitous, that's like ingrained in their negotiation tactics.
Well, the CCP is a total different animal, and you are totally 100% right on that, my friend. But I'll tell you, ask anyone that's ever done business in China. It's part of their business culture to take your trades and your secrets and everything else. It's built into their culture. Yeah. So they have a bad practice. They're bad actors on the business front. So why would we expect them politically to, be straight stand-up actors on that either? So, yeah, CCP and Iran, equal bad.
Yeah. Let's turn our attention to the political landscape. Of course, we've got the all-important midterm elections coming up. All seats in the House being contested, 33 on the Senate side. Folks are on the Republican side, you being a strategist there, are concerned about affordability. Still ranks as the inflation and the cost of living overall the top issue to voters. Just feels like, Noelle, that the longer this thing drags on, the price of gas stays elevated, this is going to be a larger factor in the midterms. Your thoughts?
No, you're totally right. That's one of the things that the Republican Party as a whole needs to get a grip on the message. And I think part of it is the reality is we are having high gas prices. We are going to the store, and it's still high. So Americans are not, feeling the relief. But with that said, a lot of people trust President Trump, and they trust what's called the process. I think there's some other things at stake here. Pocketbook is always number one, but also safety, and, the feeling of America heading in the right direction. If you ask people, they feel like President Trump is putting America in the right direction. But the problem of it is the bottom line with people with the kitchen table issues are not feeling any relief at all. That's a major problem. Now, what I will say, while some of the polls and the markers are showing, that Trump is low popularity, the weird thing of it is in some of these primaries where he's challenged some of these, let's just say, rhinos, so to speak, with Republican primaries, he's been wiping the floor.
Yeah.
So that to me is a little confusing, how he's at 30% low approval rating across the board, but yet his endorsement and his hand-picked candidates, look at Ken Paxton, look at what, happened in Indiana, look at all these things that he's got in the middle of a Republican primary, and he's wiped the floor with it. So, I'm getting a lot of mixed messages. We have hope that the midterms are going to be okay, but we still have that economic message that's not really resonating with the everyday American.
Yeah. Well, to what extent, Noelle, do you think, though, a lot of people have sort of disaffiliated with any of the primary parties, either of the primary parties, I should say, and they just consider themselves independents and just vote for the candidate that appeals to them the most, regardless of party affiliation?
I'm seeing it more and more, and I was at a sports deal last evening and talking to a big mix of people, Democrats, Republicans, and they came from all over the place. And, my roots are Arkansas, and so we were all in a big group talking, and people basically said the same thing. They feel like that they like the Republican Party for the economic platform on which we stand. But, they don't mind the social issues on the Democrat side. So basically, what everybody is saying is they're kind of centrist, which make people independent. So I feel like the rise of the independent voter is really going to go up. I really do. There's a lot of undecideds because they don't know where to go, and a lot of them are turned off by the kind of the fringe, the lunatic fringe on both sides of the aisle, so they don't feel like they actually have a home.
Yeah. Well, it feels like that there are many districts and perhaps even some states where Senate races are being contested where the outcome is going to be determined by the independents.
That's right, which makes the messaging really, really important. Now, when it comes to the economy, Republicans are notoriously better at keeping things lower priced, taxes lower. So we know that we have the label of being more favorable when it comes to economics. With that said, we're not living that, so it's confusing. But we dang sure know that the Democrats do not recognize economic, we know that what they stand for. Yeah. So we're our backs are against the wall because we know what Republicans stand for, but however, it's not resonating right now in reality. But we also don't want to go on the other side as an independent, let's just say, because we know what that agenda is.
Yeah. It's hard. I agree with you, and the contrast in their economic philosophy of Republicans and Democrats has probably never been as stark as it is today. All you got to do is look at the mayor of New York to know that, and some other upstart candidates in the country. I saw one the other day that literally wants to limit the amount a person can make, wants to limit the amount of GDP growth in the country, which is just insane. But it's hard to translate that into meaningful, beneficial policy when you're paying $4 at the pump. And I got a break right here, Noelle. If you can hang around for another segment, I can get your reaction to that.
Gotcha.
Noelle Nikpour is our guest, coming right back.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
I'm flying in a 7
back with you in the Element Well studio. Noelle Nikpour, Republican political strategist and commentator, our guest. So, Noelle, respond to that. It's just kind of hard to translate our views, Republicans' views on free markets and limited government and reasonable regulatory environments. How does that? It doesn't translate into lower prices at the pump and grocery store, and that's how voters tend to vote. They're a little short-sighted in that respect.
No, you're right. And that's the problem that we have as a Republican Party, trying to, remind voters what we stand for, because it's just, they're not seeing it. And you can tell them all day long, but look, I know when I go and fill up my car, I know what I'm paying, and I also know when I'm going to the store what I'm doing. So I don't feel like that. I know that Republicans are going to be Republicans, so that's not my issue. I think the problem is not believing politicians as a whole. I think that it goes deeper than that. I think that when you feel like no politician is really telling you the truth, I think that's where you see a lot of the fractures. And it's not like a conservative is going to all of a sudden start voting Democrat.
Yeah.
What my fear is they just don't vote.
Yeah. Well, I have even, I guess, stronger concerns about independents that say, well, in this cycle, because the price of gas is $4, and when I go to the grocery store, I'm getting beat up. I think I'm more ready for a change. I want to put Democrats in there and see what they can do, because Republicans have made my life more expensive.
Well, you would think that. That's what makes sense. But the problem is you've been a Republican, let's just say, for 20 years. To pull that lever on a Democrat,
yeah.
I don't know if, I don't know I could stomach that.
Yeah.
Even if I were mad because I feel like my district was not represented and my prices are high and I'm about to, climb the roof with these, receipts I'm looking at every week on my monthly spending. But it would take a whole act of Congress to get me to go on
Sure.
what we like to call the dark side, to go vote for the Democrat. I don't know if I could do that. So I tell you what I'd probably do. I would just sit it out, which is bad, because as a whole, Democrats can really rally. They will pick you up in buses.
Yeah.
They'll go to the nursing home. They'll pick you up. So by not voting, it actually hurts the Republican ticket, because those Democrats all rally together. That's one thing they do.
So speaking of not voting, you're well aware, turnout across the primaries in the last few months has been rather dismal. We experienced the same here in Mississippi in March. We had a primary, and we have a U.S. Senate seat on the ballot. We got 17% turnout in the primaries. What's going on?
I think it's voter fatigue. I know that I raise a lot of money for super PACs, and I have noticed my big donors are fatigued. We have donor fatigue, so I think we have voter fatigue. And let me ask you this. In a big old primary, when you've got groceries, taxes, you've got everything going on here at the pump, do you really think you're going to take time off work and do your thing to get out there and stand in line and do whatever to go vote, when you still got some problems at home with your expenses that you're not really happy about? You probably aren't going to take time out of your day. You're probably going to tell your office that you're going to go vote. You're going to go run errands and go through the drive-thru and get something to eat. Probably not going to go do it.
I think you're right. And I don't know about you, but around here we heard a lot of people say, gee, I didn't even know it was Election Day.
Well, you know what that means? That means they're not really raising the money that they thought they were going to raise, because they can't put the ads on there to tell the people.
That's exactly what I thought.
Big old problem.
Yeah,
and
because of course any reasonable ad when you got an election day coming up is, hey, be sure to go to the polls on so day, right, on the specific date. And you're right. I think the lack of funds means less promotion and advertising, and people. I can't tell you the number of people said, yeah, I didn't know it was election day. Like, what? And even in Texas, the primaries a couple of weeks ago, weak turnout.
Well, think about this. A lot of these politicians depend on the small donor, the small dollar, the small donor, when they send out these deals on your phone, give $1, all this kind of stuff, and somebody clicks and gives $1. Guess what? Those people don't have $1.
Yeah.
Or if they do, they might need to save it. So you've probably lost a lot of the small dollar donors. And then your big dollar donors are like, oh, my goodness, I'm tired of giving max out and bundling and all this other stuff. So you've got a problem with the small dollar donor, the big donor, which results in politicians not being able to get those ads out to remind you, hey, don't forget to vote.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I wonder, Noelle, to your point, if folks are just fatigued with all the various vehicles being used to bombard them with these requests. We got about 30 seconds left. What do you think?
Oh my gosh, I can speak from experience. I donate to races as well, and I get a plethora of stuff just coming through, and I'm like, oh my God, block.
I know. Noelle Nikpour, commentator, Republican political strategist, has been our guest. Always a pleasure, Noelle. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio after Fox News and SuperTalk News. Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth studio on this
Match day, y'all.
Tell the folks again, when does that get cranked up?
8 o'clock tonight on Fox or Tubi or Fox 1 or Peacock or Telemundo and all the other things out there. But, USA versus Paraguay tonight at 8 is the kickoff. Pregame starts at 5.
Gotcha. On today's episode of In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear an interview with some of Steve's friends from the Greenville Country Club for the Delta Soul Celebrity and Charity Golf Tournament. You can listen to In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar today at 1 o'clock here on Super Talk Mississippi. The C Spire text line, it's always open, 601-879-4395. SpaceX just kicked off trading, currently trading at $162. It opened up just below $150. It's up $27 right now. So 20% today. This is cool. This is fascinating. It's being reported that this IPO is going to create 4,000 new millionaires. That is incredible.
Pretty much everybody that works at SpaceX gets some SpaceX stock as a part of their compensation package. So pretty much everybody in the org chart is having a good day today.
Yeah, and this is something that I saw an interview yesterday with the company's first employees, the engineer that's hatched all this stuff. I can't remember his name, but he said Elon stresses that it's not about your compensation. Be patient. I know we're taught that that's like white supremacy or something, right? Delayed gratification. He said it's the equity that we're giving you. And he made it clear that Elon does, in fact, provide stock grants, stock options to its employees so they can participate in the good fortunes the company is enjoying now as a bona fide public company. And he said that's where you're going to make your money. So according to some estimates, 4,000 new millionaires, from engineers to cafeteria workers who hold stock options as part of their compensation. This is incredible. So SpaceX is headquartered in Brownsville, Texas. They're expecting that to create a housing boom. Oh, but that free market capitalism, it doesn't work. So I know that there's no such economic principle as trickle-down economics, and the left likes to point to that all the time as a ruse. It doesn't work because all the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. But I don't care if you call it polka dot. The fact is, this event This capitalizing on capitalism, using the United States stock market, the greatest wealth generator in the history of the world, is making a bunch of people rich. And guess who else will get rich? I know, second order thinking. All the people who will be providing products and services to these people who have all this money. It's pretty simple. That's how it works. This is awesome. I mean, this really is. The median listing price in Brownsville is $290,000. The national median for a house, $425,000. So it's expected that this is going to generate a housing boom in Brownsville, Texas. This is awesome. This is fantastic. Yeah, what Musk said in his remarks this morning, I think, Rhino, was we want to take the fiction out of science fiction. I think that's a great line. I love it. He said that Earth always has serious problems that need fixing. He argued humanity needs exciting milestones to look forward to, giving people a reason to wake up in the morning. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. So he says that this IPO will provide the capital to invest in very ambitious projects, including sending next-generation satellites into orbit and building data centers in space. This is awesome. That's totally awesome. So it is up to $163 at this moment per share. Now, of course, keep in mind that typically in these deals, when you're an employee and you get stock options and grants, you're locked up for a while. You can't liquidate your shares. And it ranges anywhere from 90 days to 2 years typically, some lockup period. I haven't researched this one. And so usually after IPO day, no pun intended, but the stock will kind of settle back down to the earth. That's pretty typical, but you'll still have significant gains. May not hang around at this $164 a share mark where it is right now. And the other thing, of course, is that, as we said earlier, Elon Musk, the world's first trillionaire. Like him or not, he's pretty creative, pretty inventive, and innovative, and he's making a whole bunch of other people rich in his endeavors. So their headquarters is in what's called Starbase, Texas. Yeah. How cool is that? $75 billion public offering. Meanwhile, in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, he is pushing for some regulations around data centers. He wants to mandate that they fully fund their own electric grid interconnections, ensure that data center interconnections help reduce residential electricity bills. Now, again, you got to explain that. It's kind of like inflation. The fact that inflation goes up lower than it did last month doesn't mean the price of stuff went down. It means it didn't go up as much. So when he talks about reducing, he doesn't mean, well, last month I paid $100 for power, and this month it's going to be $90 because I got a reduction. No, what he's saying is, instead of going to 105 6 months from now, it's going to go to 103. Still higher than it was. You know what I'm saying here. So this is a reduction in the increase. Also would require that future facilities add to the state's overall electric generation capacity rather than just acting as power drains. Would require, I don't totally agree with this one, mandate the use of water-efficient closed-loop cooling systems. That's a little dated. Yes, closed-loop systems are being used. There's still water consumption associated with that, although it is less. But there's new chip technology in the works right now. We're headed to a point pretty soon where water won't be required for the cooling whatsoever. But then the other thing is he wants to repeal sales tax exemptions. Now, keep in mind in Texas, there is no income tax. So he wants to repeal sales tax exemptions for data center projects. I have a problem with that in that, okay, well, if you're not going to extend sales tax, government incentives, tax incentives to data centers, don't do them to anybody. Be consistent. I don't think it's right just to pick on one industry or one type of project. And it will be interesting to see if this goes through and gets passed into law. This is his goal for the 2027 session. He has ordered the Public Utility Commission of Texas to file this plan by July 17th of this year. The Public Utility Commission of Texas, the equivalent of our Public Service Commission. But it will be interesting to see if this impacts any companies who are planning or negotiating, looking at data center construction in the state of Texas. There's a massive project out in West Texas that former Governor Rick Perry is involved in. I know you've probably seen that one, Rhino, and it's, I don't know how many acres, like 10,000 acres or so, a lot. And their plan, of course, is to generate their own power to serve these facilities. And Perry, of course, at one time Secretary of Energy, is an old energy guy from a governor of the state. And he's got a number of financial partners involved. Did you see that? How big is the site? Did you happen to look that up?
I want to say the original plan is between 5,000 and 7,500 with development plans up to 15,000.
Okay. So out in the middle of nowhere in Texas, so West Texas. And again, included in that is all the electricity behind the grid, so not consuming electricity from the actual public utility companies themselves. I think you're going to see an explosion of nuclear.
Yeah, they're going to build something like 4 nuclear reactors on site just for that one use case.
That's the way to do it. That's cool. So problem solved. I think the combination of that and, of course, like I said, new chip technology, cooling inversion is what they call it. Also direct-to-chip cooling, which negates the need for water whatsoever, is the way to go, and that's what's on the radar coming up. Coming right back with Caleb Sailors from the SuperTalk Mississippi News Department.
I feel good.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
You know, well, I'm a chicken fried and cold beer on a Friday night, a pair of jeans that fit just right, and the radio.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We're pleased to welcome now Caleb Sailors, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
Yeah, the song Rhino was just playing. Great song, Chicken Fried, Zach Brown Band. He says cold beer on a Friday night. I'm going to be abstaining from that tonight. I'll be covering Ole Miss for Super Talk News. Just a little promo there. We'll have you covered on all things with the College World Series, supertalk.fm. I'll be covering the Rebels, so if you want to keep up with us, I'll be posting on X throughout the game, and then we'll have an article post-game after the game tonight. Big game for the Rebels, Gerard. First time in Omaha since 2022. We'll see how they fare tonight. Taylor Rabe will be on the mound for Ole Miss. Head coach Mike Bianco has confirmed that. Usually Hunter Elliott's the Friday night guy, but North Carolina's pitching their ace, DeCaro, who has been nothing short of phenomenal this year. And so Ole Miss needs to put its best foot forward tonight, and Taylor Rabe does give them that advantage.
Gotcha. Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully the Rebels can go deep in the tournament.
That's right.
Make it interesting. All right, let's get to some news stories. First, the Mississippi Supreme Court has ruled in favor of the Attorney General over the state auditor. A case that's been outstanding for a while, right? And it's a little complicated, but explain what's going on here.
So we finally have gotten some closure on this matter. I know the Hinds County Chancery Court a while ago, way back when, kind of sided with the state auditor in this case, and I'll give a backstory. during the investigation and kind of litigation into the largest welfare scandal in Mississippi history, where hundreds of millions of dollars for the TANF program, other programs that were intended for the poorest and neediest Mississippians, ended up in the hands of powerful, wealthy people, allegedly, and for wrongful purposes. The money was reportedly steered to things that weren't intended for its natural or purpose that it was originally earmarked for, right? Poor, needy individuals. Instead, you had celebrities getting this money for speaking engagements, et cetera. Well, the Attorney General's office was prosecuting this case after getting all this information from the state auditor's office, right? That's how it works. The auditor audits, the Attorney General takes it to court is how the Attorney General interpreted state law. Well, State Auditor Shad White wasn't very happy with how the Attorney General wasn't pursuing interest on a payment from Brett Favre, the NFL Hall of Famer, Southern Miss great, Green Bay Packer great. And so he's like, okay, well, I'll take Brett Favre to court on behalf of the state of Mississippi. He does that, and the Attorney General is like, you can't do that. You don't have the power to do that. And so State Auditor Shad White goes to the Hinds County Chancery Court and says, I do have the authority to do this. I do have the power to do this. Legal judicial system step in and intervene. Well, Hinds County says, yeah, you can do that. So the Attorney General, of course, appeals this decision to the Supreme Court. The Mississippi Supreme Court rules yesterday, and this case has been going on for years, rules yesterday, Thursday, says, no, the Attorney General, the way the state law is written, is the Attorney General has the right to litigate these cases, take them to court, and the state auditor audits them. So you have the auditing process, then the litigation process, and that's how the legislature had it, those two roles defined. The auditor audits, the Attorney General litigates.
Well, in addition to audit, they investigate.
Right,
and
investigate,
of course.
And they can prosecute as well.
Well, they can arrest.
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely.
But it kind of works the way you think about it, equate it to our criminal justice system in general, where police officers charge you with a crime, and then they turn it over to the courts, and it gets litigated in the court by the judicial system.
Right. The sheriff has no jurisdiction over that.
DA
once it
gets involved.
Once the DA gets his hand on the case, the sheriff, police chief, et cetera, the only responsibility they have is just to show up in court and testify.
Right.
And so that's kind of what the state Supreme Court said, too. Is like, yes, the auditor's department, you guys can go investigate this, you can arrest people, you can prosecute this, but once it gets to the litigation side of things, that's the Attorney General's job. And then this is an ongoing feud between these two lawmakers. Yeah. And look, they're both potential gubernatorial hopefuls next year. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if I saw either or both in the ring running for office at the governor's level next year. And they've been in an ongoing feud. I mean, and this kind of hit ahead when the Attorney General withdrew counsel from state auditor in a couple of defamation cases. One of them brought forth by Brett Favre over, alleged kind of bashing of her in his book about the welfare scandal. And so, I mean, these two politicians have been going at it for a while now in Mississippi. This is nothing new, but the yesterday's ruling, though, was kind of a win for the Attorney General's office. And State Auditor Shad White did issue a statement right after the decision saying, well, if that's the case, I hope the Attorney General prosecutes and pursues these cases as aggressively as we have.
Yeah. It seems like there's some underlying political themes as part of this as well, which we should not be surprised by, given, as you indicate, both are elected officials that are likely to seek higher office.
Right.
So there we go. All right. So a tragedy in Covington County with a deputy shot. He remains hospitalized, I believe. Yes,
but he's going to survive. He is in stable condition now. His injury status, that's kind of not clear. I haven't gotten an official report. I've heard some things, but haven't gotten an official report there. But Deputy Yates Rodney was shot in the line of duty on Monday. So he tried to engage in a routine traffic stop. The individuals that he was pulling over did not stop. This is what the police have reported, what the MBI has reported, and after a brief pursuit, they finally pull over near a local grocery store in Mount Olive. And when the deputy is, performing the traffic stop, the driver of the vehicle allegedly walks out with his hands up while the passenger gets out and starts opening fire at police. Well, Deputy Rodney was shot in the process, and this was a big deal. I mean, there were blue alerts issued for the suspects. One of the suspects ended up not actually being a suspect, a man that was said to have been involved in this, went to turn himself into the McGee Police Department on Monday saying, hey, I didn't do this. My name is being thrown out here by the Department of Public Safety. I'm not involved. And so they cleared him as a suspect. And it turns out the two suspects involved in this are brothers, Cortavius and Cortavian Hobbs. And they were both arrested after a long search. I mean, it went into Monday night. Thankfully, law enforcement caught the two individuals, and people were posting videos on Facebook of them in like their backyards running into the woods out there in Covington County, which is close to Hattiesburg. I mean, it's between Jackson and Hattiesburg. And they finally got arrested, and now they've had their bond denied. They're both charged with attempted capital murder and felony fleeing. And so they're not going to be getting out of jail anytime soon. They won't have the chance to get out until, future court proceedings. But, the sad reality of this, Gerard, too, is we've gotten word, and I've gotten really good sourcing on this, is that their brother, 17-year-old Cordarius Hobbs, was the one that shot and killed the elderly couple in Simpson County last week before shooting a deputy, too. So, I mean, talk about a tree producing rotten fruit. I mean, my goodness. You have individuals, that allegedly shot a deputy this week, and a week before that, their brother reportedly slain an elderly couple who were, been told, were the nicest people on earth in their home in in Mendenhall before shooting at law enforcement. And so a very, very tragic situation, very tragic ordeal here in Mississippi, but it does look like justice will be served.
Two legislators passed away here recently.
Yeah, Representative Price Wallace, he actually died last week, the same day that the elderly couple in Simpson County was shot. Very sad situation, but Representative Price Wallace passed away. He's from Simpson County, but he represented Simpson, Rankin, and some of those counties right outside of the Jackson area. He was a big ag guy. A lot of lawmakers I saw, Representative Fred Shanks was like, if I needed to know anything about ag policy, I was going to Price Wallace. No doubt. He knew everything. But he was also a big proponent of the ballot initiative. Yep. He fought tirelessly to give citizens their right to, implement changes.
Chaired the Constitution Committee in the House.
Absolutely. And he did not stop fighting for the ballot initiative process, and he passed away. And then Representative Bo Brown passed away this week. Jackson, he is from the Jackson area. He was a Jackson City Councilman, council president at one point, and he was a tireless champion for legislation that would benefit the city of Jackson. And now, today, all flags are flying half-staff in Hinds County in Representative Brown's honor. And so two lawmakers now, that's two positions that will come open, and we'll have to have special elections for those soon.
XAI's data center in DeSoto County, Elon Musk's company, of course, is apparently generating a lot of noise. The power plant is, and so residents are not happy about that in their sewer.
Yeah, noise in the proverbial and literal sense. And, so there's a group of DeSoto County residents that are suing XAI, SpaceX, et cetera, for this data center and the power plant that accompanies it in South Haven, right there near State Line Road. I mean, right at the Tennessee-Mississippi border. And, this was a $20 billion investment, the biggest of its kind individually in Mississippi history. But the residents are saying, it ain't worth it right now because I can't go to sleep. I can feel the vibrations from this facility in my home. We hear a humming sound all the time. This ain't good. And so the courts will have to determine how they handle this.
Any response yet from the XAI folks?
No. We've reached out to XAI and they haven't said anything. But the residents did say they don't want the plant to shut down. They just want the noise to be lowered.
Yeah. And it's not the data centers themselves. It's the electric generation.
The turbines.
The turbines.
Right.
Yeah, the gas turbines. Caleb Sailors, everyone. Multimedia Journalist at SuperTalk Mississippi News. Go Rebs tonight, huh?
Yeah, that's right. We'll be watching them.
We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the sequel, Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone. That's right. Thank God it's Friday. From the movie Thank God It's Friday, starring the late, great Donna Summer. A movie that absolutely had no plot whatsoever. But the music was good, at least for the disco era. And the dancing was good. And
Love and Kisses was like the disco version of the Monkees.
That's right, and that's the name of the band, by the way.
Kind of got pulled in together and piled up into a group and said, "Here, go do disco."
So tell the folks what you were telling me on the break. Homeland Security getting into the World Cup.
Yeah, on the old Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, you got Homeland Security getting in on the hype videos. They put one out just a bit ago, hyping up the U.S. men's national team ahead of the first group stage matchup against Paraguay tonight at 8 o'clock.
Awesome. That's awesome. Let's see here. Jerry in Waynesboro says another GameStop. I think he's referring to SpaceX. No, I don't think so, Jerry. I think this is a little bit different.
There's a bit more excitement for the future of being able to take off in a rocket and land somewhere on the planet than there is in buying a Funko Pop.
That's exactly right.
Or a used video game.
Is something that has been completely and totally displaced and replaced. This is not. But so the question is, how will they make money? Because modest revenue growth is expected, even though they will have more launches. And so what's the business of this thing? I didn't realize that they had 170 launches last year. That's a lot. Reusable Falcon 9 boosters have cut the cost of going into orbit, they say, by 85%. But its revenue didn't really increase commensurately. But it's Starlink. It is the big revenue driver of this endeavor. The internet service, of course, which carried the company in 2025, is expected to continue to produce most of its revenue.
And that's one thing you've seen from a lot of the visitors for the World Cup, is they're flying across the country. And I saw one lady, she's I believe from Germany. She was talking about, how do I have faster internet over the Rockies in an airplane than I do at home?
I hadn't thought about that. But that's exactly what's going on. So that's expected to be a big part of the revenue story for the company. And then, of course, they're going to somehow inject AI into this whole endeavor as well. And of course, just utilize space travel to explore, to create, to leverage new technologies to create.
Well, one of the long-term goals literally is to make rocket launch travel kind of in the same vein as the Concorde, where it's not the economy choice, but if you need to get somewhere fast, you can pay for it, and they'll get you there quick now and in a hurry.
And I heard, I didn't see, but I heard a report when I was at my house the other day about just mind-boggling amount of time, small amount of time, duration to get from one point to another.
Yeah, it's like from Florida to Alaska in like 30 minutes.
Yeah, something crazy like that. I was shocked. So in economics,
that's why I use the Concorde as an example, because that's something people at least are a little bit familiar with as an alternative route for air travel.
And I think that's what this is being billed as, is certainly a potential revenue stream. An economic principle has always said that the velocity at which goods and services can move through an economy is a huge factor in the generation of wealth and economic prosperity. I think back of when Jimmy Carter reduced the speed limit on the interstates to 55. That was one of the first things Ronald Reagan did when he got elected, knowing that that was critical to boosting our economy. That was all because of what was a fake shortage of oil and the so-called oil crisis of that era. But that's an example. But you think about now with all of the digital business that we do. That's instant. And how much that has driven GDP growth and overall wealth creation in our world. It's a function of this instant access, instant ability to just complete activities and transactions and actions.
And that expands all the way into something like national security. I mean, you've heard people talk about it for decades now, that the electric infrastructure of the United States is pretty weak. And in the last decade or so, you've had people piggyback onto that the communications infrastructure is not as hardened as it possibly should be against threats from external forces or antagonists. So if you start having telecommunications predominantly travel through space, then the infrastructure is much less likely to be open for attack.
Yeah.
And so in the ways that you think of that we're the most vulnerable, like people talk about in the worst case scenario, like EMPs and stuff. Well,
yeah.
An EMP could knock out all the electronics in an area and could knock out a communications hub. But if the communications hub's in orbit, it's kind of tough to knock that one out.
Yeah, that's right. It's less vulnerable and it poses fewer risks, and that's the idea behind that. So just more secure overall, more resilient. Just lots of things we can't even dream of today.
And then you start thinking about the AI usage in space or the data center build out in space, where the conversation surrounding data centers on Earth, terrestrial data centers, revolves predominantly around the powering and the cooling. Well, if you're in space and you're powering it with solar, which is much more efficient in space than on the terrestrial Earth,
yep.
And you're not really worried about cooling because you're in the vacuum of space where it's as close to zero as you can get, you've kind of killed two birds with one stone.
I believe
if you can make it cost effective to get the materials up there.
That's always been the issue, is the cost of the travel itself, the transportation. And when you're able to mitigate that and address that, solve that problem, especially with these reusable rocket boosters, it's a huge cost. And you're able to eliminate and strip that cost out of the model, yeah, that opens up lots of possibilities. And I think that's what we're going to see here. And it's important that this country lead the world in this area. It's essential. And so I applaud Musk for this investment, for the creation of this company. It's just amazing what these guys are doing. And we're just getting started. That's what's so cool about it. On the C Spire text line, Kevin from Tupelo, during our conversation with Caleb Sailors, he wrote, regardless, even if there's no criminal implications, there's still repayment implications. Why are there no repayments being requested? Same with the IRS and tax issues. I assume, Kevin, you're talking about the TANF money that involved Brett Favre and others. And so I think the point is, with respect to the Supreme Court case, is that the Supreme Court is not saying that the state doesn't have the right to recover those monies, or the federal government, because TANF money, by the way, is federal money. It's just a matter of who would be the party, the agency with that purview, with that scope. And so the court says, yeah, that's a matter for the Attorney General. But, yeah, I agree. If someone obtained public money in that respect, be it federal or state, when they're not really eligible for it because of the program rules and parameters, yeah, we should pursue recovery. I agree with that. Let's see. Someone apparently is not a fan of the president here. A tree producing rotten fruit. The Trump tree is the most rotten fruit. No idea exactly what that's all about, but you're entitled to your opinion. Oh, my gosh. Oh, geez. Jerry in Waynesboro says they will pump the stock at will. Who's they, Jerry? Data centers in low orbit and cell phones utilizing satellites on the C Spire text line. That's really cool. I agree. Hey, everything Elon has touched seems to make money, so I took a chance and bought 10 shares, said Alan. Good for you. I'm surprised there's even any float out there for you to get some, Alan. I wonder how much is available. because, most of that's usually reserved for certain folks that have been involved on the ground floor. Interesting. Jason in Starkville said 30 days in Robinhood. Okay.
That's the lockout period.
Oh, okay. I got you. 30 days in when that went public, you mean? Yeah.
No, for the SpaceX IPO.
Oh, it's 30 days. Okay. Got you. Didn't know that.
I think the employees have a longer lockout period.
Probably.
But the consumers.
Probably. Yep. Coming right back.
Poly up of Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, so a 30-day lockup for investors, but probably a longer lockup, talking about the SpaceX IPO for employees, those who receive stock grants and options as part of their employment. That's pretty typical. And, of course, some of these folks, they want to monetize some of their holdings. I certainly get that. But then investors get nervous when the employees start dumping their stock. Like, you don't have confidence in, your company increasing the value of your equity. That's why that even the big C-suite executives that own big chunks of shares of public companies, they can't just go out and liquidate that. So they have a big net worth on paper, largely due to those holdings.
Looks like the SpaceX employees have a staggered lockout period.
Okay.
For what they're calling the first early release, up to 20% of eligible shares can be sold immediately after the release of the second quarter earnings call. There's a performance-based trigger in there if the stock trades for more than or equal to 30% above the IPO price for 5 out of 10 consecutive trading days, they can sell an additional 10%.
Okay.
And then it's rolled out on a time basis of 7% increments on days 70, 90, 105, 120, and 135. Then another 28% they can sell after Q3 earnings, and then all the restrictions are lifted by day 180.
That may be the most complex, convoluted lockup rule I've ever seen.
That's wild.
Yeah. I mean, usually it's just so many days, right, from the IPO date. That's interesting. But honestly, it stands to reason. It makes sense. There's logic behind that.
I mean, you're just keeping the market from being flooded on particular days and having a sell-off.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's it. Mike from Madison says, do you believe the fundamentals on SpaceX justify this valuation? Well, keep in mind, Mike, it's a good question. Keep in mind that the price of stock is essentially a discounted view of the future of a company. And so is it worth today? No, fundamentally, because of it's not making any money yet. So no. But again, it's you're speculating, you're buying based on the future. And that's what stock market's all about. And if you look at it strictly from a technical multiple perspective, meaning the price per share versus the actual net income per share, earnings per share, yeah, you can't make that work.
Look at it in terms of NIL. If you got a 3-star player, their valuation in NIL is likely going to be less than a 5-star player, even if they're both coming out of high school.
Yeah.
Because the future, the projected future, the potential for the 5-star is expected to be higher than the potential for the 3-star.
Absolutely.
So the 5-star is going to get more NIL money.
So it's all about expectations for the future. It's not about the present. That's the main point I'm wanting. And that's why even though a company will have a really strong performing quarter, it's the guidance, it's the outlook that drives the stock. So they'll have a strong performing quarter, but give somewhat tepid guidance, and the stock will fall. Not because, even though they just had like their greatest quarter in history, I can't remember the company that just literally experienced that. Stock went down because they said, well, we're not quite as confident about the future. And investors say, okay, and they pound it is what happens. But when they have the sweet spot's when they have a great quarter and they say, and we think the coming year, the coming quarter, the next 52 weeks, et cetera, the outlook is even rosier, whoop, that goes through the roof. So it's all about the future. It's a discounting mechanism, meaning takes the future expectation and discounts it to today. And that's how that's arrived at, the price point. We'll certainly see. Joey the trucker says, I cannot put myself to vote for a Democrat, but the Republicans need to do something about costs. And that was during our discussion with Noelle Nikpour, who is a Republican political strategist. I agree. I think it's a matter of, well, do I vote based on my overall underlying philosophy, where my values are in agreement with the party, versus today? The thing that's hard to explain to people that may, like Noelle said, sit at home, which opens up the possibility that Democrats get elected, is if you think they've got a solution to this inflation problem, think again. You know, it wasn't too long ago the Democrat president pushed inflation through the roof, I still say out of selfish policies. Selfish. Blew it up with that stupid American Rescue Plan because he didn't want any attribution going to the president, the prior president, Trump, for the economic recovery post-COVID. Fox News, SuperTalk News, coming right back.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. I've been home in a year, I hope she...
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
match day, y'all.
We got to head back to Vicksburg this evening for continuation of the Miss Mississippi's Teen Pageant being held in Vicksburg, of course, over there at the Convention Center. We had interviews Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm honored to be selected to be one of 5 judges. It's been a blast, by the way. They've treated us like royalty, honestly. And it's a great organization, but perhaps the biggest takeaway for me is just how impressive these young ladies are. These teenagers, man, they're just incredible. They're articulate, they're smart, they're talented, they're beautiful. They got all the ingredients. All of them do. And it's been an honor to be part of it. And again, shout out to all the great restaurants in the River City who have covered our lunches and our dinners. Really appreciate that. And our accommodations as well at the Mulberry. Appreciate that. So, been a lot of fun. Have enjoyed it. Got to head back over today, 4:30. We crank it up again. The health and fitness competition again. We see like half and half sort of deal between yesterday and today. 25 total delegates. Health and fitness, evening gown, talent, and what's called conversation. So a question gets asked. So really cool. And then we'll wrap it up tomorrow, and somebody will be crowned as Miss Mississippi's Teen. And Mississippi is so blessed with these young people, all of whom I'm quite confident are going to be raving successes in whatever they choose to do in their professional lives and their family lives. No doubt about it. Very impressed. Really cool. So, yeah, a little nuance, by the way, Rhino, with respect to this Brett Favre case. We were talking about that when Caleb was on, and And this Supreme Court decision that says, the Attorney General really needs to be pursuing this from a legal perspective, a justice perspective. The auditor investigates, arrests, turns it over. The justice system takes it from there. While he has repaid the amount of funds he received, the principal amount, the auditor was demanding interest on this money that was deemed as inappropriately provided to him. So that's where the contention is. It's about recovering the interest. I think about $200,000, if I'm not mistaken, of interest. So just wanted to clarify that because he has repaid the principal amount. Against the Grain says, whoopee, I'm so excited we are training little kids to become socialists through soccer. And, I know there's a lot of folks, typically a little bit on up there, senior in age, that feel like that's the case because it wasn't a prevalent sport for my generation, certainly. But as you pointed out, and I'll let you handle that, the socialists, it turns out, aren't very good in soccer.
Yeah, the last time a socialist nation was worth a flip in soccer was during the 70s when the level of play was such that the top players could take a couple years off to go fiddle around in France or whatever and then come back and, I'm rusty, but I can score 3 goals in the World Cup. The level of competition wasn't nearly as high at that point in time, so they could still compete. Whereas nowadays, if you're a socialist country, your people likely don't have enough nutrition to be top-tier athletes. And that's been the case. Communist and socialist countries do not succeed on the world stage when it comes to soccer nowadays. Yeah,
it's a good point. And look, if you just think about the sport itself, the industry itself, it's pretty steeped in capitalism, honestly, when you consider the pay, the compensation for these world-class athletes that draw a whole bunch of people to attend in person, watch them, buy the stuff, all the above. That's why they pay them a lot of money, because they produce a lot of money.
I mean, you look at what's considered the top club league in the world, the Premier League in England. Every single soccer jersey worn by every single player on the pitch for every single match has a giant advertisement on the front.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if that weren't providing value to the advertiser who pays handsomely for that, they wouldn't do it. It must be doing something good for them. You're right. They're like walking ads to some extent in that respect. Golf, similar to that. They always got something on the hat, the shirt, the whole bit. But that's great. That's how they make money. They just do those endorsements. It must work because it's been going on a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, the first World Cup was 1930, and that was the only time the U.S. has really shown out because they came in third. But that one's got kind of an asterisk next to it because it was 1930, and a lot of the world power teams didn't want to get on a boat and travel for 3 weeks.
Absolutely. Keith in Baden says, talking about the Miss Mississippi team, call me when they do the bathing suit competition. Yeah, they've converted that to health and fitness. And they wear clothing, attire that does, in fact, accentuate their physique and their fitness. And it's excellent, honestly. So, and they all are. I'm telling you. They all come out. They're all just... They're beautiful, and they're trim, and they're fit, and they. I think when you think about health and fitness, you look at them and say, yeah, that's an example of what a healthy, fit teenager should look like. So bravo to them. And I know they work hard at it as well. So, but it's pretty cool. Another shooting this morning. I just saw this as well. Mose just sent this in. 1 dead, 11 victims in Midland. Shooting gunman and SWAT standoff. This from the mayor. I assume that's Midland, Texas, right?
Yeah.
Mose. Yeah, I just saw that cross my wire as well. So, man, crazy. Data centers in low orbit and cell phones using satellites on the C Spire text line. Absolutely. It's totally true. And like I say all the time, the best is yet to come, and I couldn't be more excited about our future. And was reading this morning about how Microsoft is kind of clamping down. This is really fascinating. Told its engineers, stop using AI. And they said it's because of the cost. So about, I think they said a good bit of their coding is generated, no surprise there, by AI. What gets missed, though, Rhino, is, you got to be really smart to prompt the tool to create the code. You're just not doing the drudgery of the code. The hard part of coding is designing the code and laying out the structure, the sequence, the logic.
I actually heard a really good analogy for this. You've likely seen on social media or across the internet pictures or videos of artists that make portraits out of Rubik's Cubes, where they'll use the colors on the Rubik's Cube and they'll adjust it to where certain colors are showing up on that side, and they'll make a big frame, and they'll usually make a portrait of somebody famous using the Rubik's Cube. Using AI for coding is like asking a computer to solve the Rubik's Cube, but then you still have to personally go in and put the Rubik's Cubes in place to make the picture look like a person and not just random colors.
Okay, that's a good analogy. So they said they invested, Microsoft, $13 billion in OpenAI. It writes 30% of the company's code using generative AI. And they told their engineers, stop using this, it's too expensive. Uber, I didn't know this one. This is fascinating. Deployed Claude code, I've played around with that a little bit, to around 5,000 engineers in December 25. This past April, the chief technology officer told reporters that the company had burned through its entire annual AI coding budget in 4 months. So still you've got an ROI situation. Yeah, way more productive writing the code, but I think what they're saying here is it'd be cheaper for us to pay the programmers to write the code than use the tool. Now, that's not a permanent scenario. You know that.
Well, yeah, part of that comes from supply and demand. Like, they budgeted for the price of using AI initially, and then everybody starts using it. Well, there's only so much bandwidth. There's only so much compute power. So you're competing with everybody else for the use of the AI. The AI costs more, and it's not budgeted properly.
Right. And that's what they're saying here. So this just was a fascinating report, I thought. What will the clouds, Jason in Starkville asks, do to satellite service for a cell phone? Clouds don't cause any problem whatsoever. They're not an obstruction.
Usually with satellite connectivity, the only thing you have to worry about are solar flares.
Yeah, because this is not... it's not quite the same technology and architecture as like satellite television, which can be disrupted through bad weather. Usually it's not really the clouds themselves, it's the storms and it's rain, what's called rain fade, super serious just walls of water. I don't think that's the case with cell phones. Coming right back.
He's got the red, white, blue, flying high on the farm. Semper Fi tattooed on his left arm. Spend a little more in the store for a tag, and the back it says USA.
If you're about to be
Attention, adoring fans!
It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
You know, you think we're in this kind of post-woke world, but every day I come across stuff that indicates we're really not. There's still a lot of it going on. I guess it doesn't quite get the attention that it did when this was all took place and took hold after the George Floyd incident. And maybe that's because you had government and big corporations leaning so heavy into it. That was getting a lot of attention and, changing the names of everything. We're going crazy, right? But every day I come across something else that I just shake my head at. Here's one right here. Council President Ryan Delaney. He's the president for Plum Borough, Pennsylvania. He claims he's not a man or a woman and encourages children to secretly discuss their gender with people other than their parents, including himself. What do you want to bet? This cat's a perv. I urge you, he says, to find trusted adults to confide in. Sometimes it might be your weird aunt or uncle. It might be your school counselor. And if nowhere else, you can find an ally right here serving as an ally is what it's supposed to say. It's misprinted here. As your council president. Really? You're offering yourself up to hear children talk about their gender confusion? You're a sicko, and you're a wacko, and your tax dollars pay this fool's salary in this particular borough in Pennsylvania. And then another one that, you know how hacked off I get about the kids and the exposure to inappropriate content, inappropriate activity. Here's another one. In L.A., California, the Wonderland Avenue Elementary School hosted an LGBTQ pride drag queen event during school hours for little children. It was created to introduce kids to alternative gender identities. They're grooming our kids, and they're using our tax dollars to do it. This is disgusting. Why is this allowed? And I'm looking at the video, and I'm just shocked. I don't know how old these kids are. They're like in the 3 feet high range, so we're talking probably kindergarten, first grade, and they're all gathered around, sitting down under a tree with this disgusting drag queen addressing them. This is sick. Let them be kids, for goodness sake. Quit indoctrinating them to your wacko sickness. How does this happen, man, in this country? And again, at a school. And then we wonder why they can't do math, can't talk, can't communicate. You share with me every other day a video of somebody that's in the 18, 19, 20-year-old range that can't read a simple sentence that they should be able to read in the 3rd grade. This is why. Because they're doing drag queen crap. I don't think I'm overreacting here. I really don't. And I got to tell you, folks, if you know about any of this stuff happening in Mississippi, please let us know. We want to expose it. I pray. I hope not. I hope we're above this. But some things happen without public knowledge. Well, there's no doubt that there are areas of this country that have been inundated with Muslims. And I'm not opposed to legal immigration of Muslims. What I'm opposed to is anybody that immigrates into this country that does not assimilate, does not adhere to our values, our way of life. That doesn't mean we want to force you on a particular lifestyle, but we also don't want you forcing your culture on us in our country. Are we not witnessing that basically ruining parts of Europe? Great Britain doesn't even look like England anymore. So I'm looking at, sadly, a video. This is a kindergartner, Gateway Public Kindergarten, public school in St. Paul, Minnesota, which for whatever reason has just attracted a significant contingent of Muslims. I mean, we have one serving in the U.S. House from Minnesota, a wacko. Well, I'm looking at this video, Rhino, and it's sweet little kids that are like graduating from kindergarten. They got their hat on, their sash, their gowns. Every single girl is in a hijab. Every one. That's not America. I don't want the government forcing you to wear certain clothing, but I also don't want the government embracing or the public square embracing these kinds of cultures in this country. And where are the Americans in this public kindergarten? Traditional Americans.
Well, the other question is the cultural reasoning for the hijab is to prevent the sexual temptation of the men of the religion. So why do they force little girls to wear it?
That's a good point. And here's another one just for my woke news of the day. You know, old Mayor Fry up there in Minneapolis. He brought his young daughter to a drag show in the Minneapolis City Hall. And I'm looking at him. He's the drag queens are like going down the line of the folks in the central area of the atrium there in the City Hall. And he's right in the front. He's all happy introducing himself and introducing his child to them as well. But you're not surprised. One of them has got a beard that's thicker than yours. This is sick. And up at the podium with the twerking and the dancing and the fondling of his breasts with kids there in the City Hall. Is it a bordello? Unbelievable. I'm sorry. I get pissed off about it. When the kids are involved. You want to go do this crap in your house? I don't care. First, keep it out of the City Hall, Mayor. It's not appropriate. That's not what we do in the City Hall. I don't care about your sexual orientation in the City Hall. That's not what happens there. Take care of the business of the people. That's not the business of the people. Man. And don't bring the dang kids. Do they have no shame about that? They don't, do they?
Not a single ounce of shame.
Gosh, that just pisses me off. Leave the kids out of it, man. Leave the kids out. Larry Amaya says, hey, Gerard, are you going to Omaha? If we make it to the finals, I'm involved in the, as you know, Larry, the Mississippi's Teen pageant, and we'll be there today and tomorrow. Looking forward to that. And then next Thursday, I got to brag on my wife a little bit. She's the development chairman at Catholic Charities, and I'm going to tell you, my wife works her rear off on that deal. And I, for the fourth year in a row, will be serving as the master of ceremonies for the big Bishop's Ball. She told me last night they got like 420 people committed to come. She goes around town and shakes down all of our friends and all the people we do business with in our household, and they open up their checkbooks. And it's really not their checkbooks, but they provide merchandise and gift certificates and the like that we auction off to raise money for battered women. Typically domestic abuse is what mainly the work is of the local Catholic charity. So I'm proud of my wife for her effort there. She's a big reason it's a huge success. Ricky in Aberdeen says, I wish you would tell us how you really feel. I agree 100%. Man, I don't know. There's something that triggers me when it comes to children because they don't know better. And there's nothing more disgusting, nothing more selfish. I'm so sick of being told I'm greedy because I'm a capitalist. And you guys are too. I know that. Referring to our audience. Because I pursue profit. You're greedy. No, greed is when you abuse your position as an adult in the midst of children. That's greed. To force your crazy crap on them, to groom them, that is greed. That's the epitome of it. It's not always about money. That's where the mistake is. Greed is not always just defined in economic terms. It's greed in that you're getting something in return illicitly. You're abusing children with your crap. God help them. God protect them and help them see the light. They don't need that whatsoever. It's the greedy people that are screwed up in the head that do, and they abuse it. Their position as an adult to take advantage of innocent children. It's just Unbelievable. Coming right back with half an hour of Middays.
From the sea. And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On Super Talk Mississippi.
If your paycheck depends on the weather and the clock, if your conversation calls for a little more than a coffee pot.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Are you thinking about retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. SpaceX now up at the 170 mark, so $35 above where it went public earlier today. Its initial public offering, its IPO, occurring just a few hours ago. Elon Musk is now being reported at the trillionaire level, Rhino. So based on, I think, the current price of SpaceX shares, and that's probably dragging, I haven't checked, some of his other companies' holdings higher as well. So
Tesla's up a little bit.
Yeah.
Like less than 0.5%.
Yeah, I don't think that would be it, but certainly SpaceX going public, and that's a big boost to what his equity in that company was worth pre-IPO. So I think that put him over the threshold there. Interesting. Congratulations to all those involved in that. I think that there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming out of that. I really do. Hey, guys, this is on the C Spire text line. The Delta needs some help. The property taxes are going through the roof. Can our legislators not do something about this? So I'm curious, is that as a result of the supervisors, the cities increasing the millage, the actual rate of tax? There are some limitations on that under our law. Or is it a result of this instruction by the Department of Revenue? Seems like that was not quite 2 years ago, but maybe a little over a year, instructing all the counties' tax assessors to go out and reassess real property within their respective counties to update those values. So even though the rate doesn't go up, the value of the property increases, the assessable value, and thus your property taxes increase. We have heard lots of incidents of that across the state, but we've also heard some counties, as I recall, Rhino, stepped in and lowered the millage, the rate, essentially, after the valuations went up, essentially canceling out any increase, just a wash. So lower millage, higher rate, same deal. That's all I know. What the legislators can do is, they can do anything with respect to the structure and the rules and the policies around property taxes, the laws around that. That's controlled by the state government, and some of those are in place. But in general, county supervisors have control, purview over that. Of course, the school boards, they also influence that with requests for millage adjustments, cities as well, within the counties. That's the way that works. There are some, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but there are some limitations on, I believe, how much that can be raised in any given year. But that's where that comes from. About 55% or so of your real property taxes do go to the school district in which your property is located, and some 30% or so goes to the county, and then the remainder to the municipality if your property is within a city, a municipality itself. That's the way your property taxes are allocated, are distributed. And speaking of property taxes, something that is going on right now in the House, there are six committees that were formed by the Speaker of the House a month or so ago to address various issues in the state. One of those is school consolidation, public school consolidation. We have lost some 60,000 students over the last 10 years. State's education budget continues to increase while the enrollment goes down. And so there's been discussions in the past of consolidation. But this year, the Speaker of the House, Jason White, formed a committee to really dig into this issue. And they've had a couple of meetings. I don't know exactly how many, but I know they've met and talked about this considerably. House Education Committee Chairman Rob Robertson has been involved overseeing this effort. So when enrollment's down, yeah, it makes sense to thoroughly explore the possibility of consolidating districts or even individual schools. I think the latest report I saw, Rhino, is that if your district's got fewer than 1,000 students in it, you're a huge target, a subject for some sort of consolidation, either with another district or schools, maybe a combination. And they're working with State Superintendent Dr. Lance Evans to investigate the possibilities here, but I know those that have 1,000 students or less are likely to be the starting point. It's a tough one. You know, this is not popular among the education establishment, shall we say, who want to kind of keep things status quo. Of course, you've got a significant back office associated, just a minimum fixed cost associated with running a district, period, whether it's got 1,000 students or 5,000 students. It's a fixed cost of operations. And so when you consider the prospect of consolidation, you achieve some economies of scale and hopefully save money. But let's think about this. How does that affect us taxpayers? Let's say that some aggressive plan is passed to consolidate schools or districts. Well, here's how it hits you as a taxpayer. 3 areas. Your income taxes, which are already being phased out. Sales taxes, which are the primary source of revenue to the state. The combination of those two is where the funding comes to schools, which represents 53%. Education does of our general fund budget. And then it's your property taxes. Your property taxes at a local level are a big chunk of revenue for schools in the 30 to 35% range. 45% or so roughly comes from the state government down to each school district. 35% from your local property taxes, and then the remainder from the federal government. Those are the 3 major sources of revenue funds into public schools. But here's where I'm going. Currently, our formula, and there is a formula, the Mississippi, we just changed it a couple of years ago, the Mississippi Student Funding Formula, as I recall. That replaced the old MAEP formula. It's pretty straightforward. I think it was a good thing. But that's a per student amount. And then there's some adjustments. There's some weights, if you will, that adjust those figures up or down. I don't remember all the various weights, Rhino, but I know sparsity is one that got my attention, because that simply means if you got to run the buses longer distances because your population's spread out, you get a little extra money. I think special needs was another one. Poverty, another one. Maybe the number who speak a different language as a native language. There's 4 or 5 weights, adjustments. But in general, the big thing is it's a per student amount, a base amount, about $6,900 last I checked. So here's the question. If we do this consolidation with the goal being to save money, are we going to reduce the formula, the amount in the formula? Because otherwise we don't get any benefit. That's the point I'm trying to make. And so the idea is, well, if the legislature, the governor signed off on it, reduce the amount allocated per student, because consolidating schools doesn't change the number of students. That's the point I'm trying to make here. The number of students doesn't change. So the amount that comes from the general fund to the public schools is the same amount whether you consolidate or not, unless the amount allocated per student is reduced. I got to tell you, I just don't see that being a popular move in the legislature. And then the other piece would be that your local, your supervisors, your school districts say, okay, we don't need as much money as we did before. We're going to lower your property taxes. I just don't see either of those happening. And the takeaway here is I'm all for the consolidation to improve efficiencies and to save money. But unless that translates into lower property taxes or lower sales and income taxes, we taxpayers don't get any benefit from that. Just something to think about. On the C Spire text line, this individual from the Delta said, I think that's a lot of it. Supervisors and school boards are all Democrat-run. They are maxing out increases every year. So that's what I'm asking. They're actually increasing the millage? That's hard to believe they're able to get away with that. Coming right back, final segment on this Friday.
If you're feeling... You know what that means. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
It's a big old land with countless dreams, and happiness ain't out of reach. Hard work pays off the way it should.
Welcome back to Middays, final segment. Appreciate you joining us today. Talking about the possibility of consolidating schools and or school districts in the great state of Mississippi. Last I checked, I think it's 147 districts is what we have. State of Florida, I believe, is one per county. Is a model they adopted some time ago. I don't think that would be terribly popular here. I think it would be from a taxpayer perspective, but from a resident perspective, I don't feel like that'd be popular. In some counties, it'd be fine. In some, there would be significant objection. If you think about, for example, Hinds County, Jackson Public Schools, Hinds County Public Schools, Clinton Public Schools, combining under one, I don't think that'd be popular. That's just my opinion.
I mean, we've gone through something much more dramatic within living memory. It just doesn't get talked about a whole lot because it happened in the 50s. But if you think back to 1953 in the great state of Mississippi, there were over 1,100 school districts that were consolidated down to 154.
I didn't know that. I assume there's a racial bent to that, possibly, just kind of given that we weren't as far removed as we are today to our racial progress?
From what I understand, it was more along the lines of pretty much every school could be its own district unless you had a school that was really close to you and then you shared a district.
Little fiefdoms,
yeah,
more than anything else, yeah. On the C Spire text line, they will save money from not having as many superintendents and administrative personnel to pay for. Some counties have 2 superintendents and almost 20 principals. Hopefully, by combining schools, you could put the money towards more teachers and less administrators. Certainly, that would be one area of savings. But the biggest thing that's being talked about that totally makes sense, it's the maintenance of the buildings. You got these buildings that are built around, constructed around much larger student populations. They're aging. They cost a lot of money to keep up with. It's that more than it is the administrative salaries. And so by consolidation, you could achieve, again, some economies in that, well, we don't need this building anymore. So everybody in this building now goes to school in this building with everybody that's currently going to school in that building. We just got rid of that real estate headache. Now, what the state, counties, districts do with all those empty buildings? I don't know. But it's a better deal than paying to keep them up, which is a lot of money. They're all old. They were built a long time ago. Not all of them, but many are, and they're aging, and it just gets more expensive to keep those things up. But certainly the back office is a deal. But, okay, so if we take money, here's the point I'm trying to make, though. If we take money out of this maintenance of buildings and the back office administrators, principals, as our person on the text line here says, agree with all that. But if we just redirect that to the classroom, as a taxpayer, I hadn't saved any money. That's the only point I'm trying to make, is that if you're feeling like we got to do this consolidation thing because I want to break on my taxes, I'm not sure that's going to happen. I'm not hearing that talked about. You know what I'm saying here. So, because that would mean the legislature would have to change law to reduce the amount allocated per student. And heck, they're already asking for more. Even without consolidation or with consolidation. That's not going to change. Hey, send us less, legislature. I don't see that happening. So, as a taxpayer, I'm looking to save money, right? We all are. We want our government to be more efficient. But if we just redirect the money, we're not saving any. We're just redirecting it. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. We'd certainly rather see the money in the classroom and direct it towards teachers than we would in administrative bloat, and unnecessary administrative bloat, and certainly buildings that we keep paying a ton to keep up, to maintain, that are serving much smaller student populations. Just something to think about. James in Hattiesburg says, usually legislatures from different parts of the state than the proposed consolidation have to author the bill. If I'm not mistaken, the Lumberton district bill that brought them into Lamar County was authored out of DeSoto County. I mean, that's interesting. I don't know if that's the case or not. If there's some sort of restrictions on who can author.
No, it's not restrictions. It's all politics.
Okay, politics, I get. Yeah, so they don't want to be the bad guy, essentially, right? To their hometown folks who would go talk bad about them, and they'd lose what they covet more than anything is their cushy little seat. Oh man. A lot of new school buildings being built are ridiculous. A building for performing arts, a building for basketball. This is Jeff in Hattiesburg. A building for volleyball. When I grew up, everything happened in the gym with a stage at one end. Well, me too. But I think you're largely seeing that, Jeff, in the more affluent districts, right? It's coming out of bonds and higher property taxes, actually because they got more expensive, more valuable property. But in the poor districts, it's just the opposite. The buildings are falling apart and there are no new ones. It's kind of a contrast. We are out of here today. Have a great weekend. Back with you Monday. Stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.